It is a sweltering 98 degrees in the room I'm currently in, so I'm going to try to make this video quick. When I moved my recording studio upstairs, I didn't think about the heat rising because I'm stupid. But Cross-Examined just released this video. Does this Bible verse support slavery? And the verse he's referring to is Leviticus 25:40, whatever, where it says that you can purchase slaves from the nations around you, and that you have to treat them. You can't treat your Israelites harshly, but there's no such prohibition on treating these types of slaves that you purchase. We're talking about human beings here. You purchase these slaves from the nations around you. Let's get right into it. Let's jump into it. Let's do it.
Difference between the slavery in Old Testament and the slavery for the black people.
Yes.
Because the slavery in the Old Testament was mostly like an employee that is
Yes.
not paid but is protected, is
Right.
nourished, and they could not like.
So right off the bat, he's saying that the rules from Exodus, he's referring to these rules that you had to treat them like an employee. But of course, that's all nonsense. Nowhere in Exodus does it say you have to treat them like an employee. They are slaves, they are property. If you had to treat them like an employee, what is to stop these slaves from simply just quitting, from just forfeiting their contract, from abandoning, be like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm simply going to walk away? What would prevent them from doing this? If you can't hold them in place with some type of physical force, why wouldn't they just leave? Well, because they would. But you can use physical force. It explicitly says you can use physical force. Now, can you beat them within an inch of their life? Can you maim them? Can you do... No, whatever. You can't do any of that. It's not an argument that I feel is important to make. But you can hit them. You can strike them. These are rules that are given by God that totally allows you to own another human being as property and strike them. So that's what he's referring to, which is complete nonsense to begin with. But he's not dealing with Exodus. He's dealing with Leviticus. So we'll keep going.
Be beaten or whatever. But there's one passage in Leviticus 25. I'm not going to use the KJV because as a Frenchman,
Okay.
it's a bit hard. So I'm getting
Go ahead, Robert.
the CSB. Okay.
What does it
So
say?
it says you may also purchase them
The CS,
from the aliens,
the CSB.
neighboring countries, residing with you or with the family living among you.
CSB. I
Those
like Bible
born in
study
your
tools.
land, they may.
All right, hold on. Let's pause this. Let's bring up Bible study tools. CSB. CSB. Leviticus 25. Was it 40? 40. Yeah, I think it starts right around here. So let's see what he has to say.
May become your property
All right, we'll rewind it a little bit.
among you. Those born in your land, they may become your property. They may leave. You may leave them to your son and whatever. But it say also
Or whatever, he says.
living among
Hold on, I'm gonna go back.
from the aliens, so neighboring countries. Them from the aliens. So
Oh my god, I'm so bad at rewinding. I'm sorry.
25. I'm not going to use the KJV because as a Frenchman,
Okay.
it's a bit hard. So I'm
Go
getting
ahead, Robert.
the CSB. Okay.
What does it
So
say?
it says you may also purchase them from the aliens, so neighboring countries.
You may also purchase them. So I don't know if he's purposely dumbing down the harsh language, but it's not you may purchase them. It's you may purchase your slaves. Let's read it how it says, because you can't just say, oh, you may purchase them. And no, it's very specific language, and I think the language is important. It's your male and female slaves are to be bought from the nations around you. You may purchase male and female slaves. You may also purchase them from the foreigners staying with you, or from their families living among you, those born in your land. These may become your property. We're talking about human beings here, mind you. You may leave them to your sons after you to inherit as property. You can make them slaves for life, but concerning your brothers, the Israelites, you must not rule over one another harshly. That's the language of Leviticus 25, 40, 44 through 46. Be specific because it's important. Because these are this I said it once before and I'll say it again. The Bible is disgusting. This is talking about the purchasing and selling human beings. This is awful. But let's keep going. My God, it's hot.
Residing with you or with the family living among you, those born in your land, they may become your property. They may you may leave them to your son and whatever. But it say also,
Yeah, so when you die,
but if
they
it's
don't
someone
go free.
from your like an Israelite, you cannot like beat them up or something like that. It makes almost like
You cannot beat the it says you can't rule over it says you must not rule over your fellow Israelites harshly. So I think what he's getting at is, like I said, where is the prohibition? Where are the rules in the Bible that says how you must treat these non-Israelite slaves? Where are those rules? Because it's very specific that the rules in Exodus, that all of these protections and provisions are for Israelite slaves. It says this very explicitly. But where is the set of rules for the non-Israelite slaves? Where are they? I think that's kind of what he's asking.
the same thing as the black who were like beaten up and
Yeah, because it is the same thing. The Bible 100% explicitly allows and condones chattel slavery, not this form of indentured servitude that for people like Frank Turek try to sell you on. The Bible allows chattel slavery.
like it says, don't do it to Israelite. It make almost like say that you can do it for for aliens.
Yes.
How do you reconcile that?
There were privileges for Israelites because in Israel it was a theocracy.
So my first impression is that what Frank Turek is saying is that, well, they were a theocracy. They believed in God. God governed their culture. So they were treated better. He's saying I can't reconcile it. That's my first impression.
And so, like, for example, only Israelites could own land because you had to be a believer in God.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Frank, please stop doing the Turek shuffle. Or was it the Turek two-step? I think we've renamed it. Stop with the Turek two-step. Answer the question. Don't talk about whether or not Israelites could or could not own land. Just deal with the question of slavery, please.
Yahweh to own land in the Holy Land.
Why specify that the person from Israel should not be beaten to mistreated?
Well, actually,
Yes, that's a good question. Why would you put in the provision that specifically Israelites must not be ruled over harshly? Why wouldn't you say nobody can be ruled over harshly? Why, Frank? Why would the Bible say that specifically do not rule over your fellow Israelites harshly? And not just once, but twice. More,
they
in that
didn't
passage.
think, if I understand this correctly, and this is not my area of expertise, Leviticus 25, but if I understand...
Who's an expert in specifically Leviticus 25? That's what's the degree? What's the certificate that you get for being an expert in Leviticus 25? Nobody is an expert specifically in Leviticus 25, but as an apologist, as a professional apologist, as somebody who does this literally for a living, I think you might want to brush up on one of the worst parts of the Bible.
This correctly, they didn't want other Israelites to be taken in servitude. They would find another way to forgive the debt.
No. Frank Turek, you are a liar. It says you must not. These These rules are for Israelites, telling the Israelites that they must not rule over your fellow Israelites. The other nations aren't you wouldn't call them your brothers, your fellow Israelites. That's a dip. You're dishonest, Frank Turek.
Okay, because there were privileges that Israelite citizens had that people in the country didn't. But as Copan points out, any other person in another country around Israel would have fled to Israel and be put under these rules rather than the rules they came from, because they had.
Citation needed. Citation needed. From the best that I could find, by and large, Israelite slavery was very comparable to neighboring slavery. Was it better than some? Sure. Was it worse than some? Absolutely. But it was right on par. I mean, there was nothing special about the Hebrews version of slavery, except this. When the Israelites escaped Egypt, they had no system of slavery. They had no rules, they had no regulations, they had no guidelines. And that's what God gave them. So these are a fresh people with no systematic slavery because they're new. They don't have any rules. They just escaped slavery. And God gives it to them. God gives them that's what's special about Hebrew slavery, about Exodus style slavery, is that they didn't have this before, and then God gives it to them. He says, "Hey, you remember how you guys were slaves? Well, we're also going to do that here." God had a fresh start and he fucked it up. But let's keep going.
No rights or fewer rights in these other neighboring countries. So this is a great improvement. The other thing we have to point out, and Copan points this out as well, Robert, is the Old Testament law is not the ideal law for all time. No. It is not.
Deal with slavery. This is Frank Turek's specialty. See how he hasn't answered the question once? How do you reconcile the Leviticus 25 sounds so much like the transatlantic slave trade. How is it not like that, Frank? That's the question that was basically asked. Can you please separate, decouple, divorce Leviticus 25 style slavery and transatlantic slave trade slavery? They sound really similar, Frank. How are they not similar? And here Frank has gone on about what he said. Well, I'll tell you exactly how it's different. Only Israelites could own land in Israel. Okay. But also, other slaves would come to Israel to escape their form of slavery. Okay. And now is he on?
It was made for ancient.
Well, also, the rules in the Bible weren't meant for all time. Okay, but how was Leviticus 25 style slavery different from the transatlantic slave trade? Is he going to answer this?
Israel, just for that situation. Now, there are principles in it that are universal, like most of the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not murder, commit adultery, these kind of things. But some of the case law and some of this minutia that you get into, not ideal. In fact, Jesus even says it in Matthew chapter 19. Here's what Jesus says about the Old Testament law.
And now we're talking about divorce. Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because, well, he's going to read it, so I won't.
It says, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard, but it was not this way from the beginning. In other words, he's saying, I wouldn't have permitted divorce as God, but your hearts were so hard that I actually acquiesced. And the same thing is true when it comes to some of these slavery situations, really indentured servitude situations.
So let's read this. Moses permitted you to divorce your wife because your hearts were hard, but it was not this way from the beginning. I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another woman, commits adultery. Okay. I was spacing out. I missed what Frank Turek was actually saying over this. Of course, this passage is stupid because if you divorce your wife, um and then you marry another woman. How is this adultery? That's absolutely stupid. By definition, it cannot be adultery because you are no longer married or committed to that woman.
I wouldn't have permitted divorce as God, but your hearts were so hard that I actually acquiesced. And the same thing is true when it comes to some of these slavery situations, really indentured servitude situations, that God's
No, no,
bringing
no,
people
no.
along incrementally.
No, 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 no,
In
no,
fact,
no, Frank. Because, like I already said, and I wish I wouldn't speak ahead of myself because I know Frank Turk is going to say something really stupid that will prompt me to say what I had already said. But I'm going to say it again. You're not bringing people along incrementally because I keep hitting my mic. I'm sorry. Because, like I just said, they didn't have slavery. God gave them slavery. It's not like they already had a deeply rooted systemic slavery system in their culture, and God has to slowly bring them out of it. God's the one that gave it to them in the first place. They were a new people, no laws, no rules, no regulations, no economic system that they would have to have slaves to keep that going. Nothing. And instead of God saying, "Hey, do you guys remember how you were slaves? That was pretty terrible, wasn't it? Let's not do that here. Let's just be cool and not own other people as property." God didn't say that. God said, "Hey, remember how they did slavery? Well, we're going to do something very, very similar here for some stupid reason." But I digress.
you know, there's a parallel to this right now in this country.
Also, just want to point out that Frank has not addressed this question at all. If he has and I missed it, please let me know. Please, because he hasn't. All right, let's go.
We've had Roe v. Wade in place for
What the? And now we have moved on to abortion. I'm just saying.
49 years. Illegitimately argued or decided, but it was the law of the land for 49 years. Now, as soon as it's overturned, notice how abrupt some states, including Vermont, decided to go way in the other direction and say, you can kill your child up to the moment of birth.
Hell yeah.
If we're going to get people to adhere to a pro-life.
Wait, is that true? Vermont. Sorry, excuse my typing. I'm really bad. Vermont. That should be enough keywords. Your question about for a reproductive liberty amendment, abortion service. What is this from? Stop. The Federalist. I don't know if I trust this. Vermont's plan to enshrine legal abortions right up to birth. The 3-year battle in Vermont is coming to a head over Proposal 5, an amendment to the state constitution that would enshrine existing Vermont abortion liberties. Yeah, this seems not biased at all. Roe v. Wade established viability determining the state government's. Okay, I don't care about their opinion. What is Proposal 5? This takes you nowhere. Page not found. Okay. All right. PolitiFact. Here we go. We can use PolitiFact. I think they're relatively balanced. We're talking about a law that would allow the children to be aborted right up to mostly false. That is not shocking. Let's see why it's mostly false. I'm sorry, I'm sidetracking here, but Frank Turk is a liar, and I like to call out when he lies. Vermont's Catholic Church has jumped into an emotional debate over a new bill that would codify abortion rights into state's law. Vermont has joined a number of states in reconsidering its abortion law since the appointment of Justice Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. Get to it. Can't read all this. Vermont's law currently is silent on abortion and allows abortion with no restriction, it said. However, in 2016, the latest year for abortion data, 91% of all abortions happened under the first trimester, and only 1.5% 0.3% of Vermont abortions occurred in 2016 up to 21 weeks. Okay. I like, does it Snopes that gives you like the quick rundown? Our ruling bishop, Connie's statement true legal sense, but only if the law existed in a practice and policy vacuum. Without context, it's seriously misleading in regards. The proposed law would not change the legal reality in Vermont in any way, and all evidence indicates that the type of abortions that Bishop fears, elective procedures in the final stages of pregnancy, do not occur in Vermont and would not occur if H57 passes. We rate this claim mostly false. Yeah, that's not shocking. Frank Turek is a liar. Anything he says is almost always a lie. But let's keep going. Sorry, I had to just check that out because that sounds nuts. Like you could just electively, literally, as the woman's giving birth, you could just kill the baby as it like nobody's doing that. But let's keep going.
Life position now, we're going to have to bring them along incrementally. We're not going to be able to just say,
nope, sorry, debunked. They had no slavery. You gave them the system of slavery. Don't give somebody a system and then try to say that you have to bring them out of that system that you gave them incrementally. That's stupid.
well, we got to ban all abortions because people are not going to tolerate that. Just like they wouldn't tolerate a complete abolishment of indentured servitude in Old Testament times. Let me give you an example of that.
Okay, fine. I'm not going to make this argument. They would not accept a complete abolishment of. Okay, it's difficult because I want to just give Frank Turek this argument, but I don't think. I mean, if God commanded this, they wouldn't accept it. They would not be all right. Would the Israelites rebel against God and say, no, we like our indentured servitude. We're going to keep this, God. But whatever, let's give it to them. They wouldn't accept it, so God didn't do it. But what about the slavery, the chattel slavery, the chattel slavery that Leviticus 25 is talking about? Why didn't God abolish that kind of absolute ownership over another human being, chattel slavery? Why didn't God abolish that? And if the answer is because the people wouldn't accept it, it's too much too soon, tough shit, people. You can't own other people. You cannot do that. Okay, let's go.
This in Florida, Ron DeSantis knew that his state wasn't sufficiently pro-life to ban abortion. So what did he do? He said, okay, we're going to ban abortions after 15 weeks. Okay. Now, hopefully he can work further into that and maybe lower that as people become more and more pro-life. But if he had gone in and said, we're going to ban all abortions, he wouldn't get the votes for that. So what is he going to do? He's going to bring people along incrementally. Yet you see California, Vermont,
we're not
New
talking
York,
about
Massachusetts, some of these
about Ron
states.
DeSantis, the governor of some shithole state. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a God. This is God. This isn't Ron DeSantis. This is okay. There's only roughly 30 seconds ish left of this video, so I can safely assume that Frank Turek is going to not answer this question in any way, shape, or form. But let's listen to the rest.
They're going so far now in the other direction to say, basically, you can't tell us what to do.
He's talked more about abortion than he has about Leviticus 25 when it tells somebody that you can explicitly own another human being as property. Why are we talking about abortion? Why are we talking about divorce? Why are we talking about marriage? Why are we talking about land ownership? Why are we talking about any of this nonsense? Address the question, Frank Turek. But of course, Frank Turek cannot address the question because there is no right answer to this question. There is, of course, a right answer to this question. The correct answer is, well, the reason that Leviticus 25 sounds a lot like the transatlantic slave trade is because it is. It's chattel slavery. But Frank Turek obviously cannot say this, so he goes on about all these other things. It's the Turek two-step.
We're gonna kill children all the way to the second of birth. That's just depraved. How are you going to bring depraved people along? You're going to have to.
That's depraved. How are you going to bring depraved people along? Will anybody notice that I'm not answering the question at all?
Bring them along incrementally, and that's what God does here.
So not only did he not answer the question, everything he said was completely and entirely irrelevant to the actual question that was asked. None of that had anything to do with chattel slavery, Leviticus 25 chattel slavery. The question was, hey, why did these verses sound a lot? Why does Leviticus 25 sound a lot like the transatlantic slave trade? And his overall answer is, well, because God had to bring people along gradually out of slavery. Well, okay, but why does this verse sound a lot like chattel slavery? And of course, the answer is because it is. Frank Turek is dishonest. He's a slippery weasel and a liar. And we'll end it on that.